What is up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Fantasy Fellow Show this morning, Saturday morning here. We're having our morning coffee and we're gonna go over some player prop bets for week 11. I did put a link in the description if you guys want to check out the player props. And what I do is before the show, I went and loaded up all my favorite touchdown props. And basically throughout the show, we'll go through each game and kind of talk about what I'm feeling. But I do have the list of props to consider. If you're watching this later on Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening, I might have already selected my top 5 bets. But go ahead and take a look at all these bets to consider. If anything resonates with you, go forward and go after that bet. So there's a good list here. Last week I was 3 of 5. We didn't have a show last week. I was going to the Green Bay Packers game, so no show last week. Haven't done a show since week 9. We've been 3 out of 5 the last couple weeks, 4 to 5 the weeks before that, and we did hit a 5 out of 5 in week 6. So we've been pretty good the last handful of weeks. We got our record up to about 58%. So hopefully we can hit at least 3, if not 4 or 5, in this week's player props. So we're using DraftKings Sportsbook. If you guys are new to DraftKings, I think I did put some links in the description below. So please check that out. And let's hop right into it. The first game on the list today is the Chicago Bears at the Atlanta Falcons. An interesting game here. I do want to look at the fantasy points allowed stat. And this is a very interesting tool. It's on the fantasyfellowship.com. Just hover over content, click 2022 fantasy points allowed. And this is a huge deal. The Falcons allowing the second most fantasy points per game here. They're bright green against wide receiver. So they're pretty soft against the other opponent positions here, but wide receiver is a good spot for the Chicago Bears. So Darnell Mooney, maybe interested in Darnell Mooney this week. And then as far as the Bears defense is coming around, but they are pretty green against the running back. So maybe we like Cordero Patterson in this one. So as far as the game script in this one, both teams want to run the ball. So I think looking at the running backs, that's probably the way to go. You have no Khalil Herbert in this one. So David Montgomery at minus 105. I think he's a pretty good option here. And then you, of course, have Cordero Patterson. Justin Fields has been on a heater the last 3 games. I wouldn't be surprised if he finds himself in the end zone. But outside of that, 49.5 points in this game here. So they're projecting almost 6 touchdowns in this game. So this should be a good one here. So that's why I like Montgomery. I like Patterson. I think there's a good chance both those guys score. And then if you want to get frisky, Darnell Mooney down here at plus 190. Again, we looked at those Atlanta Falcons receivers. And let's go down here and look. The Falcons allowing the most points to the receiver position. They've allowed 12 receiver touchdowns in just 10 games. So it's a pretty strong chance for it. If not Mooney, maybe it's I guess that could be Komet. I guess he's considered a receiver on some plays. Probably not Chase Claypool, but I wouldn't be surprised. So that's kind of where we're looking at here. It's going to be a good running game, and we'll see if Justin Fields can take advantage of this soft Atlanta matchup. I don't feel like gambling on a Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Marcus Mariota touchdown. I think you want to stick to the guys that we talked about there. As far as passing props, let's see here. Atlanta. Both guys are at plus 1.5. Everyone's taking the under, so only 1 passing touchdown from each, which again, we mentioned maybe 6 or 7 touchdowns in this game. And if both guys only throw 1, that means there's 3 or 4 potential rushing touchdowns in this game. I'm open to, I guess it's tough to bet on these passing yards. I don't feel comfortable with it. Again, these are running teams. Interceptions down here, though. People are taking the under on the Mariota interception and kind of even on the Justin Fields. So again, we're not interested in Dallas and Atlanta for the quarterbacks. Now the rushing opportunities. Cordero Patterson, he frustrated people on that Thursday night game. He just keep in mind, like he came back week 9, and then 4 days later he gets to play on Thursday Night Football. So I get it why they weren't giving him a ton of touches this week. Though he's had a 10-day rest, he might be ready to roll. I could see him hitting his 46.5 prop. Montgomery, assuming he gets his 15 touches, I think 66.5 is a good spot. And then Justin Fields, man, he's been smashing his overs on the rushing. So people are kind of leaning into that one. I don't mind that at all. The receiving yards, Mooney is low, and you see people at minus 140. People are hitting it 45.5. What's his receptions at? People are taking the over on his receptions as well, 3.5. So again, we mentioned Atlanta can't guard the receiver. Mooney could be a nice fantasy play this week here. Otherwise, nothing else really sticks out in this game. Again, I don't really care about the receiving numbers in this game. Receptions, people are smashing the over on Montgomery 1.5 here. So what's he at? He's at 13.5. People are slightly taking the over. So if he hits 2-3 catches, he could probably hit that 13.5. So if you're interested, that's where we're at. But again, over the years we've been doing this, I pretty much specialize in touchdowns. I think that's kind of where I like to stick with my prop bets. So let's move on to a I don't know if this is an interesting game, but the Carolina Panthers at the Baltimore Ravens. The 41.5 implied total is pretty low here. And the Ravens, man, projected to win by 13. I do have a nice tool here as well if you guys want to check it out. If you just every week I change this to the week that it is, but week 11 spreads. This is a really interesting tool. So I log in all of the spreads and the game totals, and then the algorithm spits out a team total for me. So they're expecting Baltimore to put up 27, and the Panthers only 14 points in this one. So that's a pretty low score. If anyone's going to score for the Panthers tomorrow, it's probably Deonta Foreman. You can see they don't have a Panther. Like, look at all the Ravens here. The first Panther down here at plus 175. So if you're feeling risky, Deonta Foreman's the only Panther I think I can responsibly tell you guys that has a chance to score tomorrow. Otherwise, DJ Moore, Chuba, I don't know. It's Baker Mayfield. It feels kind of gross. But we expect the Ravens, man. After a bye week, they're getting Gus Edwards back. We'll see about Mark Andrews. I think if Mark Andrews plays, I'll put him on the list, but it seems 50-50 right now, so I'm not feeling one way or the other there. But I'm super curious on how Gus Edwards and Kenyon Drake, work in tandem here. I think Kenyon Drake looked really good before the bye week. I do want to look at this real quick. Total fantasy points allowed. The Ravens, not a great defense. They allow quarterback and running and wide receiver points. So maybe DJ Moore can survive in this one. The Panthers kind of average here. They're pretty bright green against running back and wide receiver. So that's kind of where we want to target. So I think if you're interested in a Gus Edwards or Kenyon Drake touchdown, I'm cool with it. You could even take like both guys to score a touchdown, and I'm sure one of them will hit to cover your bets. Maybe there's a chance both of them score. I did notice something. Lamar Jackson has not had a rushing touchdown since week 3. Keep in mind, they've been through a lot of injuries. They're cycling through the running back carousel again, but no rushing touchdown since week 3 for Lamar. I'm open to him, especially coming off of a bye week, him being healthy and limber. Perhaps Lamar Jackson finds a rushing touchdown. So again, if Mark Andrews plays, I'm open to the plus 110 touchdown. Otherwise, Isaiah Likely, man, if you get word that Mark Andrews is going to be out, run to the DraftKings Sportsbook, whatever sportsbook you use. Look at Isaiah Likely plus 135 right now. That might improve to like plus 110. But overall, again, we don't expect a lot of touchdowns. The Ravens are supposed to put up maybe 3. The Panthers maybe 1 to 2 at most. In terms of passing props, I mean, they got Baker Mayfield under 0.5 passing touchdowns. So they're saying he's not even going to throw one. Lamar Jackson here at 195. I'm not feeling either way on the passing numbers here. The rushing props, though, they got Foreman at 56.5. People are taking the over. As long as Foreman gets 15 carries, that puts him, 15 times 4 yards per carry, puts him at 60. So if you're interested in the volume there, I suppose that could be a nice spot. They got Lamar at 58.5. There's just not enough in here yet because we're waiting to see on Mark Andrews. So we'll move on to a more exciting game. We have the Cleveland Browns at the Buffalo Bills. Of course, this game getting moved to Detroit to playing indoors. So that's a huge savior for our fantasy teams. Buffalo picked to win by 8, 50 total in this one. So it's going to be one of the more high-scoring games of the weekend. Now, touchdowns. Let's actually go look at the fantasy points allowed stats. So you have Cleveland ranking 20th here. They're bright green against running backs, bright red against tight ends. So maybe a weaker game for Dawson Knox. Maybe a good game for Singletary, and they're kind of average against QB and wide receiver, but against Allen and Diggs and Gabe Davis, probably going to have some nice games from there. So basically interested in everything except Dawson Knox. And then Buffalo here, top 10 defense, pretty much red against QB, tight end, a little bit green against wide receiver, so I'm not too scared of Amari Cooper. And then, of course, the running backs are kind of average here. So with that being said, Nick Chubb, minus 175. I think Nick Chubb's always a good chance to score a touchdown. I don't mind that. One of my favorite things to do, too, is like it's minus 175, so it's not a great return. But say you take a Nick Chubb touchdown and you pair him with another strong likelihood someone that scores a touchdown. So say you take a Nick Chubb touchdown and you put it with, I don't know, say you did put it with I'm just looking around for future touchdowns. Say you took like an Alvin Kamara or like a Saquon Barkley. I know he's going to be juiced here against Detroit. So say you take Nick Chubb and Saquon Barkley together in a little two-man parlay. I think that could be fun. You have Stephon Diggs minus 130. I'm definitely open to that. Gabriel Davis has been playing well. Definitely interested in that. Devin Singletary, again, we mentioned the Browns a little bit soft against the running back. I think they allow the second or third most points to the running back. So Singletary definitely intrigues me. And then if you want the Josh Allen rushing touchdown, I suppose, in terms of fantasy points in this one, again, we mentioned this is a 50-point total. I think they're projecting probably almost 30 points to the Buffalo Bills. So that's 3 or 4 touchdowns. I think that's where you want to lay with this game. But Amari Cooper plus 155, kind of interesting. David Njoku's going to be back in this one, plus 280. I think if you're betting on Browns touchdowns, it's Chubb and it's Cooper. If you're betting on Bills, it's the 4 guys here: Diggs, Gabe, Singletary, Josh Allen. I'm actually interested in the passing props in this one. They have Jacoby Brissett under 1.5. People are smashing that. I wouldn't be surprised if he does get to 2. Again, Buffalo's going to make them have to throw the ball. It wouldn't surprise me if he gets 1 to Cooper, 1 to DPJ or David Njoku. And then people are just smashing the over on Josh Allen. 1.5 to up to minus 195. The passing yards here, I like Allen in a dome over 277, so that one does intrigue me. I'm not sure I feel either way on Jacoby Brissett's line. The interceptions, though, Josh Allen has been throwing a lot of interceptions, and the Lions or the Browns sometimes get themselves some fortunate situations. So I'm open to the interception by Josh Allen, maybe even the Jacoby Brissett interception as well. In terms of rushing yards, they don't have Singletary in here yet. I'm not sure why. Receiving yards, though, I like Donovan Peoples-Jones. He's been a really good player the last 5 or 6 weeks, so much so that he's even being looked at in fantasy redraft leagues or whatever as a wide receiver 3 flex this week. So I'm okay with DPJ. He can get that in one play. We've seen him do that before. If he gets 2-3 catches, I like his over. They don't have receptions in here yet, so not everything is in here yet. I still think they're waiting to see how the Bills are going to get to the game. So we'll see. We'll come back to maybe you'll probably have to come back and look at this once I get all the props in there. But fun game, Buffalo, Cleveland. Let's move on to. I'm actually excited about this game. This is the Washington Commanders at the Houston Texans. Let me show you the fantasy points allowed metrics here. Houston's actually got a good defense, but look at this. Bright green against running back, pretty red against quarterback and wide receiver. So not a great matchup for Heineke or McLaurin or Samuel. You probably want to lean into Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson. And then look at that. The Commanders are right there with them, but they're kind of opposite. They're green. Commanders are green against QB and running back, and they're red against running back and tight end. So with that being said, you probably want to lean into the Washington running backs. Brian Robinson plus 110 to score. Antonio Gibson, I would bet both of these guys have a pretty good chance of scoring tomorrow, maybe multiple times too. If the Commanders do put up 2 or 3 touchdowns, I'm probably going to see 2 or 3 touchdowns for these running backs. And then with the Texans, the only guy I think you can realistically bank on getting maybe a touchdown is probably Dameon Pierce. And then don't sleep on Nico Collins. He's actually the guy that's been taking over. It was his first game back last week after missing weeks with a hip injury, but he had more snaps, more routes, more targets than Brandon Cooks last week. So he might be a guy that's emerging, should be picked up in fantasy leagues if he's out there. Let's look at the passing props. And again, we mentioned it's a good matchup for Davis Mills. Thinking he's going to score 2 touchdowns. Maybe I can see it. People are slamming the under on both QBs, but I actually like Davis Mills' 1.5 more than I like Taylor Heineke's. As far as the passing yards, people are taking the under on Heineke, which I think is fair. We know Houston's got a pretty good passing defense, and then it's 220 for Davis Mills. That feels about right. Again, with Nico Collins back and Brandon Cooks back, we could see him hit that. And then looking at passing completions, interceptions, they're saying both guys are going to throw an interception tomorrow. So if you want to have some fun with that, go ahead. But let's look at the rushing receiving numbers. They got Gibby at 45.5. Feels decent here. It depends on his volume. If he gets, 10 carries, I feel good about that. We know J.D. McKissick's not in this game, so that's why we like Gibson and Robinson. Robinson, he got 26 carries last week against Philadelphia. I feel good about people are destroying this to minus 130 here. So 64.5 for B-Rob feels pretty good. Pierce line's pretty steady. I don't know if I feel one way or the other there. He's probably going to get his 15 carries. And then the receiving yards, let's look at receptions first. They don't have everything in here. They got Pierce at 2.5. If he hits 3, that's a pretty good win. Nico Collins, people are taking the under here. I might take the over. I know it's a tough matchup against the Commanders here, but again, he led the team in targets last week, and they have Brandon Cooks leading the team in receptions in this one. We know it's a tough matchup. Actually, we mentioned it's a good matchup for the Houston guys. So I do like Nico Collins at 3.5 over. I'm not sure I like Samuel or McLaurin's though. Receiving yards, Collins again. Collins at 40.5 feels too low. Otherwise, I'm probably staying away from this. I don't see anything I love here, but fun game. I'm interested in the running back production in this one. But let's move on to a more interesting game: the Eagles and the Jeff Saturday Indianapolis Colts. We'll see if Matt Ryan can get this thing turned around for Saturday. But anyways, Jonathan Taylor, of course, good chance to score, and that's kind of what I'm talking. If you took a Jonathan Taylor touchdown and you paired it with that Nick Chubb touchdown, you're gonna get better odds if you put those together. I do think Jalen Hurts, you probably got to consider him getting a rushing touchdown. I'm not sure about Miles Sanders. He was weirdly not used a lot last week against the Washington Commanders. And if we look at fantasy points allowed here, the Colts pretty good. Like they are slightly green against running back and tight end, but look at the quarterbacks and the wide receivers here. So it's a tough matchup for the passing game for Philadelphia. And then the Eagles here, pretty red against everything, but slightly green against running backs. So we kind of like the running backs in this one. So if you like Sanders, I'm cool with it. AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, with Dallas Goedert out, like these are going to be the top. Like both guys could see 8 to 10 targets in this game here, but it is a tough matchup. So keep that in mind. But I think AJB, Devonta, as long as Hurts throws one, pretty good chance it's going to one of those two guys. And then Pittman, like I don't feel great about anybody else here. So I would stay. Suppose if you like the plus 170 on Pittman, I don't hate it. It is a tough matchup, but I would stick kind of above here for all the players with the touchdowns. Let's look at the passing props here. They have both quarterbacks under 1.5 passing touchdowns. Yeah, we mentioned tough matchup for Jalen Hurts. I feel like he can get one. The question will be if he can get two. The passing yards, again, I don't feel great about either one. Both defenses are pretty good against the quarterback here. Interceptions, Matt Ryan, people are destroying that here. So if you think Matt Ryan's going to throw a pick, again, this is a ball hawking secondary. If you want to have some fun, minus 150, Matt Ryan interception sounds okay. Rushing receiving props. Jalen Hurts at 42.5. Now, I have Jalen Hurts in a handful of fantasy leagues this year. And he just hasn't been running the ball as much lately. You see this 1, 2, 3, 4 straight games where he hasn't been over 30 yards. He's only gone over that 41 prop about 3 times all year here. So, but if the secondary is playing good for Indianapolis, maybe Jalen Hurts is on the run a little bit more. Jonathan Taylor, 85.5. Kind of people are taking the over on that one, so that one's interesting. Miles Sanders, people are taking the over on Sanders too at just 59.5, but I don't know if I trust that. Let's look at the receptions. People are taking the under on AJB. People are taking the over on Devonta, and I kind of agree with them. I think with Dallas Goedert out, they like to manufacture touches for Devonta. Quick screens. Quick plays to get him in space. So I get the Devonta one. I think he's probably the better play in this game. But otherwise, nothing else is really sticking out here. They got Paris Campbell being smashed for 3.5, minus 165. Alec Pierce. People are going with Alec Pierce. So say Alec Pierce gets his 3 catches. Alec Pierce yards. I think that's the move. Probably 29.5 yards. If he gets his 3 catches, I like that quite a bit. So that's kind of what we're looking at here. I think it's going to be a fun physical game here. Both these teams know each other somewhat well enough, and we'll roll with that. So let's move on to the Jets and the Patriots. Not exciting game here. I think it's going to be kind of boring if you're watching this on TV. Pretty much it's Ramondre Stevenson. This is the only guy that I can strongly recommend to score a touchdown tomorrow. We do have a game that these guys played just a few weeks ago, and Zach Wilson struggled. I believe he got a touchdown to maybe it was Tyler Conklin. I can't remember. But tough matchup for Carter. Tough matchup for some of the receivers in this game. You look at the New England Patriots. They rank 6th best in fantasy points allowed. They do allow tight end points. So Tyler Conklin's back on the menu. But otherwise, I'm staying away from the Jets in terms of touchdowns. And then you have the Jets right here next to them, and they're pretty red against everything. So again, this is a tough matchup on both sides here. If you're taking one guy to score in this game, it is Ramondre Stevenson. I really don't care about the other props in this one. People are taking the over on Zach Wilson to get a passing touchdown, so that's interesting. But otherwise, again, I'm not super excited about this game. We'll probably move on and skip it. I'm just looking at anything that sticks out in terms of receptions. They got Conklin is the guy here, 2.5. People are taking the over on that, taking him over 25.5. So it's Ramondre, Conklin, maybe Garrett Wilson. After fresh off the bye, Garrett Wilson, maybe he gets reasserts himself as he was playing well earlier in the year. But we'll keep it moving. The Rams at the New Orleans Saints. One of the lowest scoring point totals of the weekend here at just 39 points. So this one's going to be ugly. Nobody has good odds to score touchdowns. So for me, this one's only Alvin Kamara. We could see Taysom Hill, come back and find a way to get in the end zone. But for the most part, I'm not loving this game. The Rams defense pretty solid against things, but look at they're pretty green against wide receivers. So maybe Olave is of interest to you. You have the Saints right next to them as well, slightly green against QB, but again with no Cooper Cup for Matthew Stafford, I'm just not feeling it. So I'm not too excited about this one. Let's look at the passing props. Both QBs under 1.5 passing touchdowns. Interesting. Again, if I'm going to take somebody, it's going to be Stafford on the road here. And then interceptions wise, they got both quarterbacks throwing an interception, rushing, receiving props. Let's look at this. Kamara 58.5. That feels pretty low. Henderson, I don't trust the Rams running backs at all. Again, I like looking at the receptions first because the receptions kind of tell a story. So they're saying Higbee over 4.5, and Higbee's only got 42.5 yards. So I think 4.5, if he gets 5 catches, he's probably over 9 yards per catch. So I think Higbee 42.5 makes sense. People are kind of liking the Olave 4.5, and he's just at 50. So I'm open to Olave. Again, in games where it's lower implied totals, again, because I mentioned I'm a touchdown guy, in lower point totals, I think that's where you like looking at some of these rushing, receiving, and passing props. But not a fun game. We'll move on to the Lions and the Giants, where there should be points in this game. There's 45 total implied points in this one. Giants by 3. Saquon Barkley minus 200 to score. So if you want a free square this weekend, say you just put a 20 piece on that, you're gonna basically get 50% of your money back. So if you want to, potentially hit a 0.5 xer, Saquon Barkley's your man. I don't trust DeAndre Swift, and I don't think the Lions do either. So Jamal Williams, if there's going to be a Lions touchdown, it's probably Jamal Williams. And then outside of these guys, it's hard to trust anybody on this team. They all spread it out so much, and they don't have enough props in here yet for me to accurately cover this game. I do like Saquon Barkley a lot today or tomorrow. 98.5 yards. Dude can hit that in a couple plays. So let's look at the passing numbers here. They have both QBs under 1.5 passing touchdowns, and they're kind of even on their passing yards. So not a fun game here, I guess, in terms of all the names and stuff. I do expect some random touchdowns from some players. But man, why don't they have all the pro? I like Darius Slayton. If you're gonna bet on someone from the Giants outside of Saquon, Darius Slayton 39.5 receiving yards. I think that feels pretty good. I would imagine they're gonna probably put him at like 3.5 receptions or 2 or something like that. He's been their best receiver over the last month and a half or so. Let's move on to interesting game. Raiders and Broncos, both teams fighting for their lives and just for their seasons at this point. 41 implied, Broncos by 3 in terms of touch. Let's actually look at the fantasy points allowed first. Broncos are the number 1 scoring defense, allowing the fewest points, but they're pretty bad against tight ends. So Foster Moreau is on the menu. Maybe Josh Jacobs here can take advantage of this. And then the Raiders, one of the worst teams here. They're green against everything. They're really bad against QB, though. Really bad against QB. So maybe it's a Russell Wilson game. I think the absence of, again, we like Josh Jacobs. He's always a good chance to score. Not a great matchup for Devontae Adams, but he should be able to beat Surtain on some plays. And then Cortland Sutton. He's got 1 touchdown on the year. Came against the Raiders. No Jerry Jeudy. I like Sutton in this one. And then I think both Melvin and Latavius Murray, if you have a good feeling towards either one, I'm going to bet on a guy. I'm probably going to say Latavius Murray. He's been kind of their goal line back. And then again, Foster Moreau down here, man, plus 260. I wouldn't be surprised if he has a good game against the Broncos. They've been notoriously bad against the opponent tight ends. I'm going to take Russell Wilson over 1.5 passing touchdowns. I know he's missing Jerry Jeudy, but the Raiders' passing defense is so bad. Let's actually look and see what Russ did against this team. Basically, I think it was like week 3 or 4. And I know Russ is not playing good ball. Like, I get it. He's only got 7 touchdowns on the season. But against the Raiders, he had his 1 game where he threw 2. So if you're into that, I suppose Russell Wilson 1.5 passing touchdowns, probably a good spot. Maybe you take the over on passing yards again with Sutton maybe going deep. You got Dulcich stretching the field. I'm kind of open to it. Let's look at the rushing receiving props. Jacobs, that number feels a little too high. They held Derrick Henry in check last week. So maybe the under in Jacobs comes in here. I don't really trust any of the other ones. Latavius Murray and Melvin Gordon are both pretty low. People are taking the over on Latavius, 38.5. The receptions, Sutton at 4.5. He caught 6 last week. I think that's an over for me. Moreau, people are slamming the over on Moreau. So again, we like his touchdown. I also like Moreau in yards. So to me, it's Moreau, Sutton. These are the guys you want to target in this game, and then maybe Latavius Murray. But fun game. We'll see if the Broncos can get things turned around, or I guess the Raiders. Moving on to the Cowboys and the Vikings, probably the one of the more fun games of the day. NFC North, a top seed potentially changing hands here. Let's see, 48 points implied in this game. Favorites to score, you got Dalvin Cook, Tony Pollard, Ezekiel Elliott. If I'm going to take a Dallas guy, it's going to be Tony Pollard. He's more explosive. He's fresh. He's playing really good ball right now. And then Dalvin Cook, of course. Let me actually show you who's scoring points against these guys. The Vikings are pretty bad. They're good against running back, and that's but it. So they allow QB wide receiver points for sure. So you're gonna like Dak and you're gonna like CeeDee Lamb. And the Cowboys, we know they have a great defense. They're pretty much ready against everything, but they do allow wide receiver points. I think a lot of that comes from Christian Watson last week. But anyways, you got to think Justin Jefferson, good odds for him to score a touchdown. Again, I like CeeDee Lamb. The Vikings are pretty bad against quarterbacks and wide receivers. So CeeDee Lamb, he's on a heater. Continue to use him. And then don't sleep on Michael Gallup. I know he hasn't boomed yet. I don't think he scored a touchdown all year either. Maybe one. Yeah, he got 1 touchdown in his first game back. But 7 targets last week. This team's bad. The Vikings are bad against wide receiver. I wouldn't be opposed to a Michael Gallup touchdown or a Dalton Schultz. So I think if you have a strong feeling about some of these guys, I'm into it. The other fun thing too is this is something I noticed. So I have Gallup and Schultz on here. If I put a 20-piece McNugget on Gallup, it's going to pay out almost 3x. And if I did the same thing on Schultz, like if you bet on these guys and one of them scores, you're still making money. If both of these guys scores, you have a party. So that's one thing to do. I always like looking for guys with like massive plus odds on the same team, because if just one of them scores, I'm still going to win that bet. And you don't need both to hit. But if they both hit, it's a lot of fun. So that's a good way to look at it. But let's look at the passing props. I do like Dak over 1.5 passing touchdowns. He's at -135. Kirk Cousins, I'm not sure about, because I do like Dalvin Cook in this matchup. The last week, the Packers showed that you can run on the Cowboys, so it should be a Dalvin Cook type game. And I do like Dak Prescott over 250 passing yards. So that's kind of where I'm going. I think Cowboys through the air, Vikings with Dalvin Cook. They got Cook at 79.5. Again, we saw Aaron Jones destroy this team. I think Cook's probably the play here. And then receiving numbers, let's look at the receptions. Taking the under on JJ, 7.5. Interesting. I like the Cook line. I like the Lamb line. No Gallup in here, but I like Lamb over 5.5. He's just hot right now. No Dalton Schultz in here. Interesting. Let's look at the yards. Gallup at 39.5. I think that one feels good. I think Lamb over 76.5 feels really good. So that's kind of where we lay. Again, we like Dallas passing. We like Vikings running in this one. But fun game. I'm excited to see what can happen in Minnesota. Let's move on to the Bengals and the Steelers. This game was supposed to happen on Sunday Night Football. It gets moved to a 3 o'clock Eastern or 3 o'clock Central Time game. Let's look at the touchdowns here. Actually, let me show you. The Steelers, pretty bad. They're allowing quarterback and wide receiver points. So you like Burrow, Higgins, and Boyd. And then the Bengals got a pretty good defense, guys. Red against everything here. So we don't like the Steelers. If there's going to be a Steeler touchdown in this one, I think you're looking at Pat Frymouth. I think that's pretty much it. That's the only guy I want to put some money on. It's plus 265, so it could be a fun return there. If you just put, say you put $10 on it, you're going to get paid out almost 3.5x. But anyways, the Bengals are simple. It's Mixon, it's Higgins, it's Boyd. If you're feeling frisky, you could go Hayden Hurst. So I like all these guys here. I love T. Higgins in this matchup. He's been pretty good against the Steelers, and he did get knocked out week 1. He got knocked out in this game, so maybe he's on a mission in this game. The passing numbers, Joe Burrow, people are slamming him over 1.5. I have to agree with that. He's probably going to throw 2. Pickett, people are smashing. This is a layup here, and I'm just curious. Say you put 20 piece on that, you're going to win about $9. Not the best, but it's almost a 50% return. So take the Pickett under 1.5, and then you got passing yards here. Probably Joe Burrow over. Joe Burrow interceptions here. People are saying Pickett interception. I think that's a good. I'd rather take the Pickett interception than the touchdowns. Let me remove the Pickett under 1.5, because I mean, you say you put your 20-piece McNugget on there, you're going to get about 1.5x, a little bit better than that. So Pickett interception feels good. Rushing receiving numbers. I don't trust any of the Steelers. I like Mixon at 66.5. Mixon's been catching a lot of passes, and people see that. People are taking the over on 3.5 here. So maybe his receiving number of 26.5 makes sense to you. But I love Higgins in this one. People are taking the over 5.5. Higgins probably over 75.5 in this one. Tyler Boyd, people smashing his over 4.5. Tyler Boyd at 54.5. So I think there's merit to both these guys having a good day. Under on Hayden Hurst at 4.5. His yards, let's see. They don't have his yards in here. Weird. But that's pretty much it. We like Joe Burrow and his two receivers. And I suppose Pat Frymouth, they don't have his receptions in here, but they do have his yards, 44.5. Deontay, they're smashing the over on him. He's at 4.5, and his yards are at 50. I think I'm okay with that. I do like Deontay and Pickens. So if you're feeling the receptions, that should be a good game. Pickens at 40.5. That's the one right there. So Pickens at 40.5. I like that the most. But fun game, AFC North divisional matchup there. And then we're going to finish up here with the Chiefs and the Chargers. I'm expecting both Keenan Allen and Mike Williams to play in this one. A lot of touchdowns to be had here. So take your Eckler, take your Kelsey. I think if one's going to score, it's going to be Mike Williams. And then Kadarius Toney. He's the guy here, plus 145. They're down a couple of receivers. He is the guy. I think he's going to score a touchdown in this one. Passing props here, you got to like both guys to go over. They got Herbert over 1.5, and people are smashing that. So that feels good. I'm open to the Mahomes under 2.5, though, because you can run on the Chargers. Chargers allow a lot of running back points. They're one of the worst teams against that. If you look here, the Chargers, look at that, bright green against running back. So it is a good matchup for the running backs in Kansas City, Pacheco, McKinnon, and maybe Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So I'm interested in the under here. People like that as well. The yards here, I'm going to take Herbert over 276.5. They need to throw the ball to keep up with the Chiefs. Interceptions are giving one to Herbert, not one to Mahomes. Again, we like the rushing props in this one. Eckler, I don't love the rushing props, but Pacheco, 56.5, sure. I think he's going to get fed in this one. Let's look at the receptions here. They don't have everything in because of Keenan and Mike. But of course, take the Eckler over. I wish they had Toney over here, but Toney over 50.5, I suppose that could be a little bit of fun. It's a tough matchup for Kelsey going against Derwin James, but people are taking the over. Saying he's going to get 7 catches. If he gets 7 catches, he's probably over 77.5. So we'll go with that. But you'll have to check back on this one when they get Mike and Keenan in there. And then quickly on the 49ers and the Cardinals, we're not sure if Kyler Murray's going to play, if it's Colt McCoy, whatever. But basically, the only one I want to target here is Christian McCaffrey, minus 140, I suppose. Debo, if you're interested. Maybe George Kittle, plus 175. I think that looks pretty good. And then again, they don't have everything in here yet. So we'll go with McCaffrey, George Kittle. And that's going to do it for the week prop coverage. Again, if you're watching this, I probably already have entered my top 5 or at least a handful of my picks. So check out the list of bets to consider. And again, if you guys like the video, don't forget to subscribe if you're new to the channel. Check out thefantasyfellowship.com. And again, I thank you guys for hanging out with me, watching this whole video. Tell a friend. Fantasy Fellowship, man. That's what we do. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your day. Good luck on Sunday. Adios.